Hello everyone. We are continuing with another lesson on clause endings. Now last week we talked about hazu, and we used that to describe expectations. The way we think something should be. It should, dad should get back at 7 o'clock, or tomorrow it should be sunny, or the pen should be on top of the desk. Expectations. We are going to switch gears, and we're going to talk about another sentence ender, or at least a clause ender, rather. It's not always at the end of the sentence. And we're going to talk about this guy, tsumori. Now, there's another word that you may confuse this with. There's one that is tsumari, and I'm just going to mention that right now. Tsumari usually comes at the beginning of a sentence, or the beginning of the clause, and it means, more or less, it means in other words. So, you say a whole bunch of stuff, and then you say tsumari, and you say a simpler version of that. It's almost like a TLDR. That one is not the one we're doing today. Today we're doing tsumori. And this is a really interesting one because tsumori is used to talk about intentions. However, you often see it in Renshu and in other places, and we're going to make it very clear how these differentiate. Intentions, what are intentions? They're plans, among other things. One of the ways you think of them is a plan. And you talk about future plans. So if you say, I intend to become a teacher, and you say, I plan to become a teacher. So I'd like to focus on the English first before we jump into the Japanese. Let me type it out real fast. How would you describe the difference between these two in English? I intend to become a teacher and I plan to become a teacher. Until that person started typing, I was worried that I was still muting myself. So what's the difference between intend and plan? And this is important in order, once we get a clear feel for that, it'll be easier to assimilate tsumori into our usage. I think what you said about desire and intention is, excuse me for one sec. Sorry. I think you're pretty close. Desire is not, I think, quite there, but I think what you're hitting on is that intentions are not as concrete as plans. A plan feels more formal. It feels like, which of these two would you have written on a calendar? I plan to become a teacher. I see your, I look at your calendar over the next 4 years. I see you going to university. I see you studying education. I see you getting your license. And as someone just put, you have some things in place. And maybe not necessarily, they may not have been decided, but you're going to decide them. An intention is almost a step before that. Now in Japanese, there's a bit of blurring between the two. But if you intend to become a teacher, you're getting to the point where you're making those plans. With that in mind, let's let Japanese blur that a little bit, because we can use it to talk about future plans in Japanese. Now, real fast, let's look at the two ways we can use it. We've got verbs, because we're talking about actions, right? Things we're going to do, things we intend to do. Now, interestingly, we can use it in positive and negative forms. And sure, yeah, a kid could use this to talk. In fact, they probably would. Actually, I'd say they'd probably say, I want to become something. If we're getting into what's the most common Japanese they'd use, they'd probably say, if they want to become a police officer, they'd say like 警察になりたい. That's probably the most common. But if you are, let's switch it up. If you are sitting for an interview to get into a high school, yes, high schools have interviews in Japan. It's crazy. And they're say, tell me about your future. You'd use tsumori. Like, I intend. You're showing a strong focus on doing that. But they're a high school student. They don't have things planned yet. And the high school they're going to is not a prep school for police officers. It's just a high school. But they would use tsumori to say, yes, I intend to become a police officer. And so I want to do my best at your school, etc., etc. So yes, you could use it and you probably would use it in a more formal situation to describe that. Otherwise, you'd probably just say, I want to become a police officer. Now, there's a big change here, and and I love the way that it describes this here. When we talk about plans, we typically talk about things we are planning to do. You usually don't, now not always, but typically when we say the word plan, we usually don't talk about things that we're not going to do. You might say, yeah, I'm planning on not attending that. But generally speaking, I think plans are focused on positive actions. Not positive in the good sense, but positive in the yes, I'm going to do it sense. And in Japanese, I feel like that's where you see the biggest distinction. Is there's another word called yote, which I don't think we've talked about before. And it's plan. It means plan. And so if if you are going, I am returning to America this year for a little trip, and I'd say something like this. I am planning to go home to America, or go back to America. I have plans to return to America. Now, typically with yote ga aru, if you have a plan, you're talking about something that you've penciled in. And you usually don't pencil in not doing something. I don't have plans. I plan to not go to Australia. I plan to not do this. I'm putting in my calendar today, don't go to Australia. That doesn't happen. Yote ga aru is typically for these positive actions that you have planned. Tsumori, however, can go in either direction. It can show your intent to do something or your intent to not do something. So suru tsumori is, this is just a fragment, but you're talking about I intend to do something. Ikanai tsumori is I intend to not. I don't intend to do that. Let's look at some examples. Now, the first one, konbanwa, and this might sound strange to you because you say, well, hi, konbanwa, but it's not that one. It's konban actually being used for this evening. Konban wa ryori suru tsumori desu. I intend to cook tonight. And you'll also notice here that with this one, you see there's a bit more of a casual feel to it. Now we're using desu, but yote ga aru feels more formal. It feels more like there's a paper involved. The paper has the writing on it. And so you wouldn't say, talking to your spouse or partner and say, hey, honey, what are you doing? Well, I have plans to cook tonight. That sounds like it's something that comes out of a business meeting, but tsumori sounds more like an intention. I intend to, but at the same time, it's not so solid. They're using tsumori to say they intend to, which sounds like there might be something that gets in the way. Like, yeah, I plan on it. I intend to cook ... But I might be busy. So before we even jump to the next sentence, let's stop on this one. And let's take a look at a couple of minimal pairs. So we're keeping the same topic. We're talking about tonight. Talking Ryori shimasu. Ryori suru tsumori desu. So what's the difference? You're both talking about what you're going to do tonight. The first one is a statement. The statement of fact. I'm going to cook. I'm going to cook tonight. That's 100%. Unless you fall over dead, you're going to be cooking. The second one shows an intention, and so it's, I'm just kind of making these numbers up, but it's not 100% yet. There's an underlying, yes, something might get in the way, but yeah, these are my plans. If I can do it, I'm going to do that. 料理するつもりです. And same with the second one, with the same percentage, or maybe slightly higher, you can use it in the negative sense. You can say, well, the party tomorrow, I'm not planning on going. I don't think I'm going to go. I'm not intending to go. Regardless of the way you say it in English, this is how you would use it in Japanese. You would not say, I don't have plans to go tomorrow. You would just say, no, I don't think I'm going. I don't intend on going. So you can see that it is, showing that intention in either the positive or the negative form. Now, you can end it with des, you can end it with da. So what does that mean? That means you can use this in any situation. It's not a tsumori is casual or tsumori is polite. Only use it one or the other. Whatever you end it with is going to mark the politeness of, the sentence. And with this, actually, this is one is one panel. Let's ignore what's below this. It's in there, but I'm going to ignore it for now because it doesn't fit quite in the way that I'm explaining it. So these are all about intentions. And let's practice. Before we go, there's actually two ways you can use tsumori. And I'd say this is the more common one. Talking about future plans or not plans, future intentions or not intentions. So let me open it up to you. Now, of course, you don't have to tell the truth. You can say whatever you want. You can make something up, but tell me something that you don't have penciled into your calendar. You don't have, if you are going, it's probably pretty late now, but if you're planning on launching fireworks tonight, and it's going to happen, nothing's going to stop you from shooting those fireworks up because it's the 4th of July in the US, you would not use this. But if it's something that I intend to do or I intend to not do, but things might change, there's still a 10% chance it might change, 20% chance, use tsumori. Now you can talk about something you plan to do tomorrow, or it might be in 5 years. So think about something you plan to do or you intend to do, but it's not a formal thing. You don't have proof of it yet. You don't have an itinerary. You don't have a hotel reservation. You don't have an application to Teachers Academy or whatever it is. But what's something that tomorrow, in a week, in a year, in 10 years, you think you're going to do? I'll give it an example. I'm currently in Japan, as most of you know, and my kids are 5 and 7 years old. They're in the school system, and we as a family aren't wild about any particular country. Like, we find good things about Japan and bad things about Japan. Good things about America, bad things about America, and other countries as well. And so we're pretty sure we're going to be in Japan for a while, shibaraku, but it might change. A particular opportunity might open up that we want our kids to take part of, and that might be in the US. So it's not, the chance is low, but it's still there. So I'm going to say, shibaraku Nihon ni sumu tsumori. I intend to live in Japan for the time being, for a while. When I say a while, I mean a number of years. Now, with the sentence that the other person put out, you wouldn't use demo. You'd use something like kedo. Nihon ni iku kedo. 東京に行かないつもりだ. And that's when you change that, that's a great sentence. So you've got your plan at the first half. That's 100%. Going to Japan. But I don't think I'm going to go to Tokyo. I'm not planning on it. Of course, that could change. There's a chance it could change unless you have been banned from Tokyo because you painted over some building and they're like, never come back. Then there's a chance that something might catch your eye and you might go. The next person's talking about they intend to tidy up their room. I hope that happens for your sake and your family's sake. Tomorrow you intend to cook chicken katsu, but I like this one. When you say that, it makes me think, for example, you haven't bought the chicken yet. So maybe tomorrow you'll be busy and you won't have time to get it, and so you'll make something else. But as far as you know now, that's what you're intending to do. So that's an excellent way to show that it's not 100%. The chicken isn't in hand, maybe. Someone else is planning to study grammar tomorrow, but we all know how things go. Sometimes it just, studying is always about intentions. It's really hard to make a plan and stick to it. And so you intend to, and hopefully it works out. What about negative things? Well, one person put one up. They are not intending to go to Tokyo. What about the rest of you? Can you think of an example of something you don't intend to do? Tomorrow's the weekend. 週末だけど. Throw that da in there. 週末だけど出かけないつもり. Good. All right, let's keep going. This next one, I bet some of you had seen this usage of tsumori before. This next one, there's a much better chance that you haven't, that this one is newer to you. And I want you to hold on to that intention. We're talking about intentions. I want you to hold on to that word. This one is also used for intentions, but let's take it and let's kind of stretch it out, and not just intentions, but supposed to or assumed to. And these will make more sense when we see actual examples. But this one, you will see verbs, nouns, adjectives, everything. And so you see the verbs being chunked on the same way we had before with the short form. So kaita tsumori, yonderu tsumori. Nouns get the no, and adjectives get attached to them the same way that you would attach to a noun. So treat tsumori as a noun in this case, and then you have everything hooking onto it the way you normally would. Now this one is used when you are discussing something in the past, something that has already happened, and it's something that might have happened a few seconds earlier, but something that's already happened and it's contrary to and this is what I'm trying to jam that in, contrary to your intentions. And that might be your intentions, or it might be the the expectations of the way something should be. Again, once we see some examples, it's going to clear up a little bit. So we've all done this. If you haven't done this, then it's waiting for you in the future. You try and write motsu or matsu, either of those two kanji, and you write the other one. They're so similar. How's anyone supposed to tell them apart? And you meant to write matsu, or you meant to write motsu, and you wrote matsu instead. What was your intention? You had intended to. You were supposed to. You had meant to write motsu. Motsuを書いたつもりけど, I had meant to write motsu, but 間違えてmatsuを書いた. Up until now, we were talking all about future stuff. This is now being used to show past intentions. And what's the only point in showing a past intention? Is when the intention and the result was different. I'm sorry, I meant for it to be a compliment, but it got taken the wrong way and I made someone sad. I meant for it to be. That's an intention. That's I'm trying to show you what I was trying to do because the result was different. So, a break from the intention. Let's look at the second one. 生徒たちは本を読んでいるつもりです. Now this one you might not hear quite as often, but Renshu is trying to give you different examples of how those verbs come out. By far, the most common when you see verbs is this top one. The past tense, something is finished, and you meant for it to be that way, but it's not. This one is closer to, they should be reading it, but you're not sure. I intend to have them read it, but they could be screwing around and playing games. Again, this one it's here for completion, but I hear it almost never. When it's verbs, it's almost always in this past one. Now this one's an interesting one, where you're saying it was supposed to be like it is supposed to be fall. For us in the northern hemisphere, let's say October. Like it is fall. It should be fall. Why is it not cold, or why is it not cool? So this is an interesting one because it is fall. You're not saying it's not fall. You're showing a break from, in a sense, the intention of the month or the season. The expectation of the season. It's supposed to be fall. Why is it hot? Now, this one bleeds over a little bit with what we learned last week. So let me show you a bit of a comparison with what happened last week. Last week we were talking about hazu. So let's rewrite this using hazu. You might see something like this. It's fall. Aki dakara. Atsui hazu janai. Or if you want to keep it to the positive form, we could say something like this. Aki dakara suzushii hazu desu. It's fall, so it should be cool. It should not be hot. This one, the tsumori, is not linking on to the description. It's linking on to the state of it being fall. Like it should be fall. You're not saying it's not fall. You're saying it should be fall. Why does everything else betray my expectations? But you're not denying the fallness of it. Now, again, when you're describing the situation with other things, you're not going to see it as much. Using it to describe your own actions, your own intentions, it's much more common. Let's look at a few more examples. テストは難しいつもりだったが、優しかったと思う. Now this one is actually one that I'd say it's more common for describing your own actions because you usually use it to, you're covering up unintended results. Like, oh, no, it was not supposed to be matsu, it was motsu. Or this is one that, you know, before we look at the ones on the screen share, look at what I just typed into the channel. Can you imagine when someone would say this? What situation would someone say, inu no tsumori da kedo, it's supposed to be a dog? When might this be? No, it's not that. We're actually not talking about an actual dog here. Drawing, yes, during drawing. So I'm a terrible artist, especially next to my wife who does all the artwork for Renshu. It makes mine look even more terrible. So I try and draw a dog. It looks like an abomination. And, you know, my son says, what is that? Or my wife says, what is that? I said, well, it's supposed to be a dog. Or let's go back to the word we've been using all lesson. I intended for it to be a dog, but it's not. So it's like, yeah, it should be a dog, but I'm sorry, it looks like a potato. So you're showing your intention, the intended result, so you can compare it to the actual result. And so interestingly, the sentence that's on Renshu, you can actually see it being used by both the student and the teacher. So as a teacher, I might, if I was making tests, I might say, yeah, I intended for the test to be hard, but everyone got 90s on it. Or, you know, it might be from the perspective of the student saying something similar. You know, this is supposed to be hard, but it was easy. And last sentence. あの人は有名なつもりだけど、私は知らない. So it's they should be, like, that person should be famous, but I don't know them. And I think this might be a bit hard to parse apart, but I think the difference you should be looking here, especially compared to the hazut that we saw before, is with tsumori, you are not denying that statement. You're not here, ano hito wa yumei na tsumori. So this person is famous. They are famous. You're not saying they're not famous. You're saying it's like, they're famous, so I should know them, but I don't. A break in what, you know, was either intended, or a break in the reality and the way that you see it, or the way that someone else sees it. I intended it for it to be a dog, but it looks like a potato. They're supposed to be famous, but I've never heard of them. You're not saying they're not famous. You're just saying, yeah, everyone says they're famous, but this is the first I'm hearing of it, or hearing of them, kind of thing. Now, all this being said, I would again go back to what we were talking about earlier. When we're using tsumori to describe intentions about future actions or future inaction, if I had to make up a number, which I will say that one is used 90% of the time to describe future action or inaction. Using tsumori this way to describe a current situation or something that's already happened is much rarer. And inside of that, of this, the rarer form, the most common one, I'll type down in the channel, is this one, is describing personal intention compared to actual results. Dog versus potato. I wrote matsu and I meant to write motsu. I intended, I can speak from, unfortunately, I can speak from experience that one time, many years ago, back when I was in my 20s, I was in Japan, and there was a teacher that I unintentionally angered. I did something without realizing it. I bothered them when they were busy, and they'd gotten angry. Excuse me. And to top it off, when I went to apologize to them, I think my Japanese was still, oh, 1 second. Sorry, a bit coffee today. I think my Japanese was not good enough so that I wasn't apologizing in a Japanese way. I still remember, because it still haunts me to this day, when I apologized to them, they thought I had been doing something to make them angry on purpose. They were busy, and why would someone come and bother me when I'm busy unless they wanted to bother me? That was the way that they had interpreted it. And I, of course, did not mean that. They were one of my favorite teachers. And I responded saying, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I like you. You're a good person. And I wouldn't do that to someone I disliked, but I especially would not do that to someone I liked. And it was trying to apologize and show them my like of them at the same time. But they took it in the opposite direction. It made them even more angry. They thought I was mocking them, which I wasn't the case. And so in response to that, I could say this. Ayamari, which is an apology. Ayamari no tsumori datta kedo, motto okkochatta. So my intentions were very, very clear in my head, but not the greatest Japanese, plus not, in Japanese, it would have just been a simple apology. Like, I'm sorry I did that. And that would have covered it. And if I'd stopped after saying that, it would have been great. But I was trying to explain myself, and it made it worse. But my intention was there. It was intended to be an apology. And so looking back at that, I could use this grammar to describe that. So that's it for today's lesson. We've had some that are on the shorter end, but that's all that we have for tsumori. So if you don't have any questions, then we will go ahead and wrap things up. While people are thinking about questions, I'll let you know we do have one more event next week, and then we'll be on break for about a month for summer break, and then we'll be jumping back into the N4 lessons. Don't see any questions. Of course, once the event ends, you can still ask if you have them. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you're able to use tsumori now. I really feel that any language learning, you start with absolutes. I like this, I hate this. I am this, I'm not this. I do this, I don't do this. And as you get more and more in, especially with things like this, with hazu, with tsumori, you're starting to hedge. Now, I don't mean that in a negative sense. You're starting to learn how to say things that aren't 0 or 100. You're aiming for 90%. You're aiming for 60%. and it gives you a much more nuanced view of your existence, which is true because we're not absolutes. You know, we're a mix of everything, intentions, feelings, all that good stuff. And this one will definitely help you achieve that. So thank you so much, and I hope to see you next week. Bye.